Once there lived a king and queen with 12 children, all boys. When the queen fell pregnant for the 13th time, the king, who was a bit of a tyrant, told her that if she bore a girl, all 12 boys would be killed, so that the kingdom would fall to their daughter. 12 tiny coffins were made and placed one inside the other, like terrible Russian dolls, all 12 in a locked room. The queen was given the key, but ordered to keep silent and never speak of it to anyone. But she called her youngest and favourite son to her, unlocked the room, and showed him the 12 terrible coffins.
"Your father had these coffins made for you and your 11 brothers. If I give birth to a girl, you will all be killed and buried in them. You must escape, all 12, immediately. Go into the forest with your 11 brothers, and at all times one of you must sit on the highest tree looking towards this tower. If I give birth to a son, I will put up a white flag, and then you may come back. But if I bear a daughter, I will hoist a red flag, and then you must fly as quick as you can."
The 12 went off into the forest, and each kept watch in turn, sitting on the highest oak and looking towards the tower. 11 days passed, and it was the youngest son's turn, when he saw the flag being raised. It was blood red. They were to die, all 12. So they fled deeper into the forest and came upon a little hut, standing empty. There they settled, leaving the youngest to keep house, while the remaining 11 went out to find food. And so they lived, quite happily. The king and queen's daughter was now a young girl, bold and fearless, with a golden star on her forehead. One day she saw 12 small white shirts among the wash things, and asked her mother whose they were. With a heavy heart, the queen showed her the 12 tiny coffins, one inside the other like terrible Russian dolls, and related all that had happened to the 12. So the young girl set off for the forest to find her brothers, taking the 12 white shirts with her. Eventually she came to the hut, where she found a young boy.
"I am the king's daughter, and I'm searching for my 12 brothers, and I will walk as far as the sky is blue until I find them."
She showed him the 12 white shirts, and he saw that she was his sister,
and they both wept for joy and embraced.
When his 11 brothers returned that evening, he asked her to hide in the wash-tub to surprise them. As they entered the room, he lifted up the tub, revealing the king's daughter with the golden star on her forehead, and they all rejoiced and loved her with all their hearts. One day she went into the garden and saw 12 white lilies growing against the wall. Thinking she'd present one to each brother at dinner, she plucked all 12. Immediately her 12 brothers turned into 12 black ravens and flew away over the forest. Then an old woman appeared.
"What have you done, child? Those 12 black ravens were your brothers, who are now forevermore changed into ravens. The only way to change them back is if you remain silent for 7 years, never speaking or even laughing. But that is impossible. If you utter even a single word, and 1 minute of the 7 years is remaining, then every one of your brothers will perish immediately."
But the bold and fearless young girl pledged to save her brothers, so she went to sit in the highest tree in the forest, where she never more spoke nor laughed. One day a rather shy prince was riding through the forest, when glancing up he saw the beautiful king's daughter with the golden star on her forehead, and was so charmed that he momentarily overcame his shyness and asked her to marry him. She said nothing, but nodded a little with her head, which suited him rather well in his shyness. So they were married. But all the while the bride neither spoke nor laughed, not even once. When they had lived together for several years, surprisingly happily, the prince's mother, who was a meddling sort, began to slander the young princess, who of course had no way of defending herself. At first the prince refused to believe his mother, but she wore him down with her accusations until eventually he was persuaded, and the princess was sentenced to death. A great fire was lit in the courtyard, and she was bound fast to the stake. Just as the flames began licking at her clothes with their red tongues, the final instant of the 7 years expired. Suddenly 12 black ravens came flying through the air, and when they touched the ground they became her 12 brothers once more. Immediately extinguishing the flames, they set their sister free and embraced her. Now that she could speak again, she told the prince her story and why she had remained silent all these years. Then she broke the happy news that she was expecting their first child, which little did they know was to be the first of many, 13 in all.